Jonathan, it is awesome to see you again. It's been a couple of weeks. We saw each other at GTM 2024. How are you doing?
We did. What a great conference. First time I've met in person. Obviously been around, and you live in one of my favorite places in Arizona. So, but man, I've been doing good, living my best life, transitioning to the cold weather, getting ready for the holidays, but all good here. How about you?
Why is Arizona a good place to be?
So, it's actually my wife's favorite place. And, they say happy wife, happy life, I believe, right? So it's my favorite place too. But no, in reality, it was a really good place. So weather's great. Even though it's hot, it's a dry heat, right? When you're in Texas or Tennessee or the places that I've been, it's humid. So even an 80 or 70 with high humidity is awful. And so loved Arizona. Love Sedona. Me and my wife have been there 3 or 4 times for our anniversary. So we love the Red Rock Mountain. So you can go from there to Flagstaff and get snow. It's kind of insane. I never knew there was snow in Arizona. That doesn't even make sense. So, but yeah, so it's such a great place to live.
It's one of the 5 C's we're known for. Climate is one of those C's. Cattle, cotton, copper, and citrus are the other 5s, or the other C's. And it is one of those places where you can get up into the mountains and see snow and see leaves change, and you could be in the desert and not have any of that stuff at the same time, which is I love living out here. So we're going to talk a little bit about like emerging technology, process, revenue. We're going to hit on a couple of different topics. What are you doing? What are you excited about when it comes to the AI space?
Ooh, man, there's so much to be excited about. In fact, I think we're actually sometimes a little too excited, and we don't have foundational things in place. But what I'm really excited about is really around how can AI help augment humans and be able to help them be more efficient and more effective, and really eliminate the mundane task. I mean, think about, let's just throw an example. 70+% of time that a salesperson spends is not with a customer. I mean, does that really make sense to you? If your whole job and goal is to be able to build relationships, be in front of customers, and really help solve their pain points and problems with your product or service, you only spend 30% of your time in front of them, makes no sense, right? And you could say that across multiple go-to-market functions. So I think what's really important to me and what I'm really excited about is the way AI can help eliminate those, automate those, and help you be more intelligent so you can actually do what you're best suited to do, which is be in front of customers, be strategic, be creative, all those types of things. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Where are we spending the other 70% of our time?
Well, let's see. Research, preparation, internal meetings, working internal processes. So think of, building contracts or, rallying different groups or different cross-functional stakeholders to get you things that you need. So there's a lot of different places like that are really driving down the time that you're able to spend with customers, as an example.
So in each of those things, where does an enablement tool or capability to start talking about AI? And we'll go pretty deep here, but where does an enablement tool start to address some of those challenges, either on the research side, the prep side, the internal meeting side, or the process side, and start wherever you want?
Yeah. I think, there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, if you will. So let's just go through, and I like to work in process or linearly, especially when I'm thinking about this. So I think, if you think about, let's say, the research. So if you are, and I'll give you an example of something I just did. So, the company, from a strategy perspective, the company that I'm in today is at the top of its S curve. And we're trying to find what is the next level of growth that we need. And we have to innovate around that. Is it a new market? Is it a new product? Is it a new business model, et cetera? And so AI was very impactful in my research of understanding, hey, here in brainstorming, here are the core challenges that we have. Here's who we are. Here's the data. Here's the markets that I think make the most sense. Let's go through and analyze and research which one of these could work out. What are the pros and cons? What are blind spots that I have I'm not thinking about? And so it's really kind of that brainstorming partner, but as well as pulling in research. So let's take it a step down and let's go back to the sales example. Is if you're not prepared to go into a meeting with your prospect and you don't know about them in depth, about the industry that they serve, about the potential products that they have, the problems that they're experiencing, both at the company and individual level, like that takes hours, sometimes even days of research and real preparation. But now with AI, it can actually solve a lot of that for you by going out to research it for you, bringing it back in a cohesive way, brainstorming together, having discussions. And I think about from the market and the research perspective, we just in preparation, that's a huge benefit and a huge time savings. So that's one of the many areas I guess we could dive into. I'll go with one more. Another one could be, think about a world where we have all this conversational intelligence, conversational AI, if you will, call recordings. So everyone is getting, whether it's Gong or Zoom or Outreach or whatever, right? You're getting all this intelligence. But the question I always ask and find super interesting is you have all this information, but we don't do anything with it. And so I think about, this is like one of the mind blowing things, like I've got it. And then it takes someone like a manager to go in and research and try to figure out what are the key things that they need to do. Then with coaching me as an example, then they need to build a coaching plan based upon that. Then they need to have a coaching conversation. And then once the conversation is done, I have to then go practice or try to institute and change my behavior. Well, all of those things today are time consuming and a lot of people don't spend time doing it. And I would actually argue and debate that that's where you should be spending the majority of your time. We have all these other things that we're doing. And so think about a world where AI takes all of that information for you. It gives you not only the insights, but builds you the coaching plan. So then you can go have the coaching conversation. Once you had the coaching conversation, it gives me or the rep a plan that they can practice and execute on of the behaviors that they need to change in examples, and then becomes a partner with them to actually practice that before they go in. You should never practice on your customers. And so I think about, like, those are two very important and distinctive ways that you can use AI today that I think can really change the game for some of the things we're talking about.
Why do you say you should never practice on your customers?
Well, because that's like saying, I'll use a quarterback, let's say Patrick Mahomes. I'll just use him. I don't know why he popped in my head. I guess that's because I was just at a field trip with my son on Friday, and they got to race Patrick Mahomes virtually. So we use Patrick Mahomes. That's basically like saying your Super Bowl winning quarterback doesn't do any preparation or any practice leading up to the game and just shows up and plays, and you expect to have, a world-class athlete that's a master of their craft that can win games. So it's the same thing here, right? You only get that opportunity. You may only get it one time. And so practicing on your customer, instead of that being your game where you're very, very prepared for, it's a fool's errand, and you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. And so if you can practice before going into the conversation, and you're anticipating what the objections, the conversation, the questions are going to be, you're very thoughtful, then ultimately that's going to lead you to more success than not.
So let's go into the tool itself and just some of the common misperceptions of what the tool can do or how to use the tool. So for people who've not used any AI tools or don't believe that they've used any AI tools, because some of them might already be embedded in some of the things they're working on, but for someone who's not used a tool yet, what are some common misperceptions or misconceptions, I guess, that folks would have around what it is and what it isn't?
Good question. So I think a lot of times people, especially when they're going to start, I think there was a stat, and I would have to find it, and I'll share it with you. And it may be a little bit old now, but ultimately I think ChatGPT, when it first came out, had like a 50% churn rate within the first 30 days of someone using it. Okay. And so I think what people thought was there's this intelligent chat that that it knew what I was thinking. It knew what I was trying to say, and it would give me the best and most optimal outcomes or answers just by me basically asking it a simple question. Unfortunately, it's similar. It's almost like if you think about ChatGPT or AI tools, think of it as like an intern. If I don't give an intern if they don't understand my business or they don't understand what I'm trying to achieve, and I don't give them clear directions, instructions, context, etc., they're going to give me back a very poor quality product or outcome or output from what I'm looking for. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions of what it isn't is something that you can, not have to explain things to very deeply to really get the optimal outputs that you're getting. And so that's where kind of prompting came in. And so, making sure that you have really good prompts and real clarity around what you're trying to say, the outcome you're trying to get, and giving any context or data information, I think is probably one of the biggest misconceptions of why people stop using it. And really they've kind of created, I use this example of what I call the blank canvas problem. It's the same thing with Excel. If you open, which is more relative to people, and I think most people use Excel. If you open up Excel and you create a new sheet, what is it? It's a blank sheet with nothing there, a bunch of rows and a bunch of columns. And so you're like, okay, what is it that I'm trying to do? And if I don't know what I'm trying to do and the outcome I'm trying to get, and I don't know how to use Excel well, then I'm not going to be able to get what I want. ChatGPT or other AI tools, Claude, Gemini, any of the others that you talk about specifically around that, it's the same thing. What do you do when you open it up? It's a chat. And there's nothing there except for maybe a few basic prompts, but those prompts are very short and sweet. And so I think understanding that you have to practice, you have to learn, you have to really fine tune what it is that you're doing over time. I mean, look, I when it first launched, same problem here. I had to learn over time how to do it. And I think a lot of people are looking for this silver bullet or magic wand that AI, but that's really not what's going to happen or not the case. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I heard as you're going through there is we have to be able to apply foundational skills to leveraging it, to using a tool so that we can create leverage and actually make change happen or have it that kind of impact that we expect. It's like a hammer. The hammer is not going to swing itself. Right. And I could do a lot of damage with a hammer in my hand. There are some people who could do really good things with a hammer in their hand. So your relationship with the tool is important. Your awareness of the tool is important. Your practice with the tool is important. And it doesn't need to be much more complicated than that, is kind of where I would go with this. It's get out there, start using it, put it into practice, test, figure some things out. Is that fair?
No, it's very fair. And that's a lot of times, what we'll say is you just have to practice. You just have to get out there and test some things and you use basic things. I mean, even use personal things. Like I'll give you, a great example. I'll just use yesterday. That's very, very simple and basic. My dog has, this bump on him, and I was like, I didn't know what it was. So I just took a picture of it in ChatGPT and said, hey, tell me a little bit about what this could be. So just simple things like that. Or, hey, I'm practicing my multiplication tables with my son and he's doing 9s right now because he's in 3rd grade. And so what are ways that I can, be creative and fun to help him? So, just simple personal things that you would do in everyday life. You can even get started like that. You don't even think about it from a business perspective. And that will help you even fine tune how you use it and the capabilities. So.
Yeah, and when you do it, when you go through and do those things, you can actually test it and see how close the tool is to what you would do as a professional who's doing that thing. Let's use another example. Could be the piece around the dog. I'm not a veterinarian. I wouldn't know what the bump is. I don't know if the bump is, if the tool is sharing accurate information. What I do know how to do is smoke brisket.
Ooh, yes.
So I could go in there and I could ask the tool, and I've not done this, and maybe I need to do this as part of this exercise, but what are some things that I should do to be prepared to make the best brisket possible? And I can tell you there's the best brisket this side of the Mississippi is here in my backyard in Gilbert, Arizona. it doesn't get any better. And my family was actually in Texas recently, and they were at Frank. Did they go to Franklin's? No, they went to Terry Black's.
Terry Black's, yes, good place.
Yeah, and they were raving about it. I was like, you guys, it's just been that long since we've had good brisket at our house. But if you test against things that you already know, what you'll see is some of the base level fundamentals, the foundational things are there. And the thing that I'm most excited about when we start talking about how to leverage tools like AI and many of the platforms that are out there is how it can help accelerate speed to impact, build out that foundational stuff really, really quick so that we identify where potential blind spots are, where some of our risks are, and get really comfortable going out there and testing things.
That's right. That's right. 100%. And I'll use before you go, I think it's interesting because again, I don't want people to also think that they just have to use it for, go to market or whatever, but let's use your brisket example. So let's say you have brisket. So what is it that makes your brisket unique or better? You have that, and you can have AI help generate that, document it, et cetera, put it into a recipe for you to remember or to share with your friends or loved ones so they can potentially try it. Probably won't be as good as yours, but ultimately they have that ability. What if you decided, hey, I think I want to turn this into a hobby or a business? Okay, great. Well, hobby. Okay, great. Are there competitions out there that I should go to? Or how do I think about that? A business, great. How would I design and set up my brisket business? What are the things I need to know? Like all those types of things you can just ask, and you can be able to have this thought partner with you that's super intelligent, has access to the internet and other things, and talk to it. All those types of things, I think, is you can apply this to almost anything and everything that you do.
Yeah, it's one of the things that a lot of people will struggle about, specifically when it comes to things like goal setting and execution, is being able to distinguish between the work that needs to be done, just this giant task list, and how it specifically aligns with the goal or objective that I'm trying to accomplish. So connecting the dots between the goal and the work through some kind of organized strategy. And you can go into a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the tools that are available and ask that simple question. I think Ryan shared something over the weekend about getting in shape. Like, give me some strategy and tactics around getting in shape. How would I build out a plan? And it's through these prompts and conversation that you have with the tool that you can start to refine and simplify your approach. One of the things that I like to do is start really, really big and broad, narrow down with some questions, and then go back and ask for a summary, communicating at a third grade level. And then even looking at it and communicating at a kindergarten level. Like, how do we really work to simplify these things? Because too often we overcomplicate the work that we're doing on. And here's a tool or resource. I really like the language you used, a thought partner that we can use to help get out of our own way and simplify the work that we're doing so that we can actually get the right work done in the right order and know how to look at the feedback. Are there other use cases that you're seeing specifically around things like process alignment or process efficiency or process documentation that will help people not only be more comfortable with leveraging the tool, but also seeing how a tool like ChatGPT, that's the one that I use most often is ChatGPT, the OpenAI stuff. A little bit of Perplexity, a little bit of Claude. How about on the process side? What are you seeing on the process side? Where is it helping you and the folks that you work with on the process side of things?
Yeah. So I think, a couple things, and I'll throw a new tool here, in the mix, especially on process. But, so I think one is, you mentioned something, documentation, and it amazes me that, I've worked at many companies, and it always seems like process documentation is something that no one ever really has. It's kind of like, wait, we operate our whole business in a bunch of processes, but we have no documents or the documents are very thin or high level of how this process operates, and how to make it effective. And maybe what are the learnings that we've learned to bring us to the process that we have today. And so, again, I think using AI, again, you listed off a bunch of examples, but using any of those to really get your process documentation saves you so much time, whether it's product documentation, RevOps process, handoff processes, et cetera. So sales process. So we used it for commissions, building commissions plans and the process for that. We built it for territory process planning. We've done it for handoffs, lead to opportunity. So whether you're going to an SDR, BDR, or directly to an AE. So there's so many different ways you can just map the process out. And oh, by the way, speaking of map, not only will it document, but it'll create you a process flow chart. Mm-hmm. And so, previously you'd have to use a tool like a Lucid or a Miro or something like that. But now I can just have it create this document for me, or this view for me. So I think documentation, there should be no excuse anymore to not have thorough documentation because AI can do this for you. I think the second thing is, what processes it helped us enable? I think ultimately, using tools like a Zapier or a Make or something like that, I think has really been beneficial because it can basically automate processes, which is different than AI. So I think it's very important people understand the difference between automation and AI and when do you need each one, because you don't need AI for everything. AI is the buzzword and but you don't need it for everything. And so Zapier can help with automating processes, but it is also connected to, OpenAI and ChatGPT or Claude or others. So you can enhance that process using AI. And so example, we'll go to the preparation for meeting example. So this is a mix of an automation and AI. So let's say a new meeting is booked. So that can be online or something like that, right? So it'll go and it'll sign that lead out to someone. Okay. So that's an automation. I don't need AI for that, but I can automatically assign that out. Then it can automatically score the lead. Okay. This can either be an automation. So on the automation side, think of the lead score as a set of static variables. So every lead comes in, it looks at these things and it scores it. You can use AI to score it dynamically by looking through all of your data and saying, hey, what is the propensity for this to close based on the information that I have and based upon all my closed won opportunities that have been assigned. So that would be using AI. So you can go either way, depending on what you want to do, but that's an automation versus AI. Now, once it's assigned and the score is there, it can go do a search on LinkedIn, the company website, et cetera, to basically prepare me for meeting notes. So it will bring in information about the person, the persona, potential questions to ask, potential objections, company research, all those things. That's AI. So that's the AI portion of this. And so I think that in itself. Oh, and then by the way, then the automation is it'll push that into, Slack, Teams, email, wherever you want it, it will push that out. So that's an automation, not AI. So I think when you think about a process, that's one of many. That's kind of how I think about all the different ways that, not only automation can help, but then how you enhance it through AI that we didn't have the capabilities to do previously. I mean, it's a basic example, but easy. I think it's the easier one to understand.
Yeah, really powerful to highlight the difference between automation and leveraging this thought partner, this other resource that can go out and pull information. And I think if you're out there and you're thinking through something like this, like how does it apply? How does it apply to me? Start asking, start prompting, start documenting, share the information. And one of the questions you may want to ask, and this is what I'll ask with clients that usually gets a pretty good get a good response, is what question did I not ask that you expected me to ask?
It's a great question.
And if you go in and ask this tool, this resource, it will come back. It will give you some recommendations on things that you maybe aren't considering that could be blind spots that you have. And you're going back to the brisket piece. You can't ask me for my recipe. I don't have it. I do it by feel. Now I know what goes in and I know where things are. And there's certain points where I'll pull, where I want to wrap the meat and when wrap the meat at a certain temperature, when I want to pull the meat at a certain temperature. But when it comes to adding certain things in there, like ingredients, like how much cold brew coffee do I add, or how much instant coffee do I add, or how much what's the mix between coffee grounds and chili pepper, like, or chili powder. Like, those are different things that start to influence what I do and kind of how I feel as we go through this. When you use a tool, the tool can take the meathead of me who just does this by feel and actually organize it in a way that's repeatable by somebody else. Right. Now, think about how that potentially impacts your onboarding of new team members, your everboarding of new team members, your hiring of new folks. Like, how does this start to apply in each of those processes? Really cool to see a lot of the innovation that's happening when it comes to leveraging tools. What are some of the AI tools that you're using today that a lot of folks might not even be thinking about? The ChatGPT is out there. Gemini is out there. What are some of the tools that you're using that you're excited about that other folk might not be aware of?
Yeah, sure. Let me go to that. Let me go one back to your brisket thing real quick though, because I think it's interesting. And I saw this example, and I'm not going to get it right because I don't remember exactly who it was, but there was a company that was using AI to come up with new flavor profiles based upon what was in the mix. And so going to your brisket example is you're talking about coffee, you're talking about other things that you're mixing in. What would be interesting and a good thought partner is, like, you may be thinking about what you know, and then throwing in that and saying, hey, what else could potentially make this more, I don't know, spicy or more X, Y, and Z flavor profile? And it could give you those examples, and it may be terrible. And you'd be like, no, I'm not going to use any of those. Or maybe never thought about that. That actually sounds interesting. Let me try that out one time. And so I think, again, that's a really good basic example of how you could use AI as a thought partner, for sure.
Let me build on that. Again, the reason I want to build on it is because we have our own inherent biases. We have our own, like, preconceived notions and beliefs around what will work or what will not work. Like, you have to do this X, Y, or Z, or if you do A, B, or C, this is what's going to happen, or whatever those biases are. One of the cool things about this, using a machine to help work through this, is those biases are not necessarily there. Now, when you prompt, you might find some of the stuff you already know, but imagine what happens inside the margins, the stuff that's just outside of that space of what you know or what you've been exposed to or what you've experienced, and how can that start to apply, whether it's flavor profile. The other one I've heard people doing is sharing just a couple of ingredients. Hey, I've got these I've got these things in the fridge. What can I make? And now you start to change. You start to rethink what you can do with the certain resources that you've got available to you. So let's talk a little bit about tools, and then I want to get into some of the risks, some of the things that people are thinking about, like the dark stuff that's in the back of people's heads around why or why not, that might be getting in the way of them using some of the tools. But let's talk about a couple of the tools that are out there that you're using.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, probably 85% of my things that I need to get done or want to get done can be done via the LLMs. And I think that's one thing that I share a lot is, there's a lot of third-party tools out there, but if you really, one example. So for the company I work for, we're in health tech, and there's this thing called ambient scribe. And you may have heard of it, but ultimately what it does is, in the same way that we've burdened salespeople with CRMs, we've burdened doctors, physicians, MAs, all nurses with basically having to input a bunch of information into an electronic medical record, which takes them away from, engaging the patient and actually practicing medicine. So ambient scribe is something that will listen. It will document, it will put things into the right place in the electronic medical record, the MR, or the HR, and it allows them to take that administrative time off of them. Okay. So we went out and said, hey, we're going to go partner with someone to basically, because why would we build this? People have built this, et cetera. What we found out though, was as we were getting into it, we could actually easily build this same capability we're AWS customer, by using their agentic platform that's like no or low code to build this kind of capability, the conversational capability that they have today already with dictation and other things, and then going directly to the foundational model connected to our data. So, and it didn't take that long to do. And we were, a couple months to do. And so we actually moved away from having this kind of middle layer, this app layer, directly to the foundational layer. So I give that as an example because I find a lot of times I can do that. Now, some other tools that I think that are interesting to use, I'll start with the basic ones and then I'll go to the other side. So basic ones, things like I'm a Canva user. And so in Canva, I can have it create me a presentation or a basic framework of a presentation. I can have AI build me an image. I can have it AI remove backgrounds and things, right? So you don't think about that's actually AI doing that. So there's some basic things like that in Canva that I can use. I also use Groove, and Groove is kind of interesting because it's kind of this note taker. So you think about there's a bunch of funny, interesting things around people. You'll see this from time to time where someone's in a meeting, there's more AI note takers than there are actual people, right? And it's like, that's the point we've gotten to. And so what's interesting about Groove is you don't have to have an AI note taker. It actually takes it outside of the meeting, and then it can put it in a certain structure that's very, very interesting. So that's one that I use. Try to think of. I'm sure there's others, but I mainly, like I said, I mainly use the foundational models, and now I'm starting to move and spend more time on creating agents. So in things like Relevance or Elevation Labs just released a kind of no code way to build out a conversational AI with a knowledge base. There's another one called Chatbase, and Chatbase is kind of a chatbot based, intelligent agent that I can connect to my Notion. And so I have, I don't know, all of my experiences in Notion. So I hope Notion never goes away because I probably have 25 years of things I've known, things I've read, things I've researched, just things in there. And I can connect it to Chatbase, and it allows me to have share that with people where they can actually have the same knowledge as that I put in here. Or I can use Notion's AI inside of the page and do the same thing. And so also inside of Notion AI, you can have it build out, you can basically put, let's say I want to do research on tools. So we're talking about tools. So I actually do have research on tools. I can put the name of the company and the URL, and I can have it fill in product description, information about it, pricing. I can have it do all those things automatically. So that's another interesting way of using AI. And then I would say probably the other one that I'm using is Notebook LM. I think people are sleeping a lot on Notebook LM that Google released. It's kind of interesting because I use it for, I can pretty much learn anything that I want to learn on demand. And so you think about us being busy, I can take research documents that are hundreds of pages. I can put 50 of them in there with website articles and things about something that is similar. And it will auto generate a almost podcast, if you will, of two people talking and debating or discussing what it is that the materials and sources that you upload is about. And so literally in an Uber, on a car ride or whatever, I can pretty much learn things I've never learned before. And I wouldn't spend, hours and hours reading and researching. And it also gives you the ability to chat with those documents or those articles. So if you want to ask questions, it'll create FAQs for you. You can ask questions, et cetera. And so I think it's super powerful because, and this just kind of goes back to some of the points that we're making, whether it's brisket or go to market or whatever, is that you can almost become a pseudo expert at a lot of things in very short order, a period of time, or at least enough to be dangerous, if you will, at the topic. And it's easier than ever. And so I think that that's probably another one I would say that other kind of tools and examples that I use in kind of my day-to-day or week, if you will.
Very cool. You'd mentioned LLMs, and just for folks who may or may not know what an LLM is, can you describe what an LLM is?
Yeah. So an LLM stands for a large language model. So it's really the foundational model that sits under a Chat GPT, a Claude, a Gemini, et cetera. So when you are actually asking questions, let's just say to Chat GPT, you're actually, that's the kind of user experience, user interface, but behind it is OpenAI's, LLM model. So that could be 4.0, it could be O1, which, is more of the sophisticated one. So those are all different LLMs used for different things. So that's what an LLM is.
Is there an evolution to where people are creating their own LLMs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually think the smaller customized LLMs will actually be where people find the most value in the future. The reason being is, and there's a lot of research on this, the larger the LLM and the parameters that exist, it actually makes it more generic and can give you hallucinations or other things like that, right? And so what you'll want is a more specific and customized for what it is exactly that you're looking to do. So what I mean by that is you can still power your smaller LLM. It can still use publicly available LLMs and things like that. But ultimately, you would want it to be trained on your like enterprise data or custom knowledge bases or things of that nature. And you can build out an LLM or a knowledge graph that's specific to, your need. And this is where, transitioning a little bit to AI agents, this is where is going to be the power of them, because they're going to be very specialized to accomplish specific objectives and tasks. And they can be powered by a mini LLM, if you will, that's unique to that thing. So let's say, for example, onboarding. You can have an onboarding AI agent that's powered by an onboarding knowledge-based LLM that's specific to that. And it will be much more accurate, if you will. And if it needs to go beyond that, it can go, tap into the publicly available LLM. So yes, I do think there is a world where smaller LLMs will win and people will be, there'll be tools out there to where you can create your own large language model, if you will.
So before we get into risk, let's talk a little bit about AI agents. What is an AI agent? How might someone use an AI agent? Where might people be interacting with an agent today that they might not be aware of? Like let's talk about agents.
So perfect. So good. So an AI agent is really, think of it as a software in its basic terms. So we all know what software is. We interact with it every day. So it's a software that can go and autonomously basically know an action to take, an objective that it needs to accomplish. And it goes and does that with limited to no human oversight. So it basically, think of it as a good example, and one that's kind of used a lot is Gemini has released kind of a travel agent, if you will. And so the simple context would be, let's say I want to book travel. So I can go and I can say, hey, I want to go to, you just came from Hawaii. So I'm going to use that because now I'm a little jealous. So let's say I want to go to Hawaii and I want it to be, this type of degrees. I'm interested in these types of things, et cetera, et cetera. What it can do is it can go out and not only can it build me my itinerary and things, but then it can give me, I can say, maybe I'm in a budget. My budget is X dollars for the flight, X dollars for the hotels, and X dollars to spend on, activities and things. So it can basically go out, not only create me an itinerary, but book my flight, book my hotel, book the events and things that I want to do, book my rental car or Ubers for me. Like it can do all of those things. So that's an example of taking it from just an LLM or basic, like I ask it questions, it gives me an itinerary. I can do that today. That's not an agent. That's just interacting with the LLM. But the agent portion of this is that it goes and knows the objective, which is to book my travel for me and do all those things. And that agent will go and, go and do all those things for me. I think that's probably a good and basic example that most people understand. So really we have our own agents today. Either we're our own agent because we do this ourselves, or if we use a travel agent, an actual person or agency, they're our agent that are doing these things for me. Well, now we'll be able to use AI to do that for us versus one of us having to do it.
Are there tools that you are using today, or that you'd recommend on to use to help kind of build out your own agents?
Yep, there's a few of them. I would say, unless you're technical, though, they're not in a good place just yet. So relevance AI is one. There's another one I think called Vector Shift I've used. So there's a few of them. I can send you a list of them, and they're starting to become kind of no code, low code. But the challenge, another good one is you can actually create agents in like Make or Copy.ai. So technically you're building these agents, but what it looks like is a workflow. And so there's elements of the workflow, kind of like Zapier, as mentioned earlier. And so right now you have to understand how to build out these workflows. So for the most common person, it's probably going to be a little bit difficult to do. I mean, you can learn, it's easy to learn. You just got to spend time learning, et cetera. So unfortunately, there's not really a place to do that today. And then to take it a step further, even in those workflows, that builders and things that we have today, what I just described of actually going and booking and things of that nature doesn't, it's very rare that it exists without a lot of code and things of that nature. So it's kind of hard. We're very, very early on, but I have no doubt that next year at some point, in fact, OpenAI said they were releasing their agent. We'll see what that means, beginning of the year. And others will come out with these like kind of fine-tuned, no code, easy to build agent capabilities here, probably, let's say next year, maybe the year after, but I imagine it's probably going to be next year sometime.
I think if you're listening to this and you're saying, hey, I'd like to try, but I don't know where to start. Well, contact Jonathan. You can ask him some questions.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's out there and help you. As you go through, think about like a discussion around workflow or process. Some people do not believe that they have a process to do things. And I would challenge your thinking on it. There's always a process. Many times that process happens organically rather than by design. And a simple way to look at this is just think about the process that you go through to go pick up eggs at the grocery store. Work backward from the point that you leave, heck, that you come back to your house and put the eggs in the refrigerator. Work those steps backward and see all of the things that had to happen, had to be true in order for you to get the eggs from, I have an idea that I want to have eggs tomorrow morning. I don't have them in my refrigerator, so I need to go out to the store and go get them. If you work that process backward and document it, you'll actually see that many times you follow the same thing, whether it's about doing laundry or it's about going and getting eggs or it's getting to the gym or it's doing the work that you do on a daily basis in the way that you make money. There is a process. You may not be aware of it. And when you work through it and document it, then you start to see what the workflow is, the things that have to happen in a certain order in order to execute on something or turn something into something that's true. And this is where you can use a lot of the prompts that we've been talking about since the beginning here, engaging with the different LLMs to kind of get a view on what might a process look like, then match it against how your process works, start to figure out how you might want to iterate on it, and then put these pieces together. And when you start to layer in all of these individual brushstrokes, the process, the design, the information, the agent, you'd be shocked at what you might be able to solve for and start to automate in some of your general workflow. Let's talk about the risks and some of the risks that are out there. Some of the reasons why people are reluctant to dive into using some of the tools or resources that are out there. From an organization perspective, what's a typical risk that either a CFO or a chief risk officer, chief compliance officer, or someone in HR, what are some of the typical risks that they're going to bring up or bring to attention when you start using these tools in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think let's start with the CFO first as a persona. So the CFO is going to want an ROI, right? So that they're dollars and cents. So where I've seen the struggle, and there's a lot of research out there to show this, is that it's been hard for people to quantify the ROI of using some of the AI. And I would argue or debate, there's a few reasons for that. One is they're just looking at it as a shiny object that they can just, use for things like, for example, taking notes in a meeting. Well, that has some ROI to it, but you can't really quantify it enough to get a CFO's buy-in. So it's really important to understand where are the places, the low-hanging fruit in the organization that you can test and start small in order for you to showcase, have a baseline of data and understand where it is today, utilize AI and see where that baseline is. So am I measuring, cost reduction? Am I measuring revenue growth? Am I measuring some sort of, efficiency effective metrics? And so to them, it's really about, before I invest money in this, what is the ROI? And I want to make sure that you've got a good case around that. So I think the risk there is the inability to showcase the ROI. And I think that's kind of where people get stuck a little bit today, to move outside of maybe a pilot or a proof of concept into something else. I think for your CTOs or your chief risk officers or things of that nature, it's really about your data. How do I make sure that whatever a person is using or putting into this, or it has, it has access to, so i.e. through an API or something like that, that it's not training the model on it, number one. It's not accessible to others outside of the organization, number two. And there's a zero retention policy of that information. So there's, OpenAI or Anthropic or whoever you're using is not retaining that information. So that's what they care about. There are some ways to do that. Easy ways are through the cloud provider. So if you're on an AWS or something like that, they have easy ways for you to kind of have a walled garden around it, I think, number one. But number two is, they're technical enough where they can put up some safeguards and things of that nature, to help. But I think that's really the questions that they ask and want to know, are those types of things. I think for, for like a human resource officers, I think there's a couple things. So one is, how does this impact my employees? So is AI going to replace the people? And how does that make them feel? Because ultimately there's the elephant in the room, right? I think for a lot of things is like, AI is going to replace my job and I'm going to no longer have a job. And I think that is somewhat of a reality and somewhat of a perception. I think it depends, right? And if you think about that element, every technology platform shift that we've ever went through, whether it is, going from, manufacturing steel, or if it was, PCs, or if it was the internet or mobile, all of them have created more jobs than they have lost. They've just been different jobs. And so I think AI in its platform shift will be interesting to see, but there's going to no doubt be different jobs that are created. It's already creating new jobs. And so I think that's where an HR person is concerned about, is like, how do I think about this and how it will, not impact them? But on the flip side of that, I think you also risk, if have employees that are not using it and know how to use it and are literate on using it, and your competitors or other people do, then they're going to experience, higher efficiency, higher effectiveness through their workforce and productivity. And I think that is kind of it's an important risk that you have to think through how to weigh, because, I can tell you today that those that use it are way more productive. And so there's this saying that we say is like, hey, AI is not going to replace your job, but someone who uses AI in the same job as you will replace you or will be better than you. I think that's something that we have to keep in mind and think about, because I think that's the true power of it.
So those are really awesome examples of perspective that each of the different folks that are involved in this would think about risk. And there's a number of other roles that you may want to look at inside your organization as you start to figure out risk. Let's shift things to the individual, though. So for me as the individual, what are some of the risks that I should be aware of, or how should I be looking at risk as an individual wanting to leverage or use tools that are available, tools like this that are available?
Yeah, I think there's a few risks. So one is that you could experience some hallucinations. I mean, that they happen. And so I think one of the things that I've, said for a long time, even since the very beginning, is you still need to double check the work. You can't just, go and rely on it all. It'll provide you sources, check the source. Sometimes the link comes back and it's an article that's been taken down. And so maybe it still existed, but if I'm going to source something, I need someone to be able to go to it and read the exact thing. Or I've caught it in situations to where, I was doing a data analysis and I said, hey, who's my top performing AE by, deal size, for example. And it actually gave me the number 2, not number 1. And so I think there's, these scenarios, and while it'll be 90, 95, sometimes even, 99% correct, and it's going to continue to get better, you still need to double check the work and make sure that it is accurate. So I think there's a risk if you don't do that, that you can, you can look bad in a scenario where someone actually does double check. I think the other thing that's an interesting risk, and this one actually came up, one of my employees, their daughter was using AI to help them do research and things for writing an essay in college. Mm-hmm. And now college professors, and this is a whole nother tangent topic we use, are using AI detectors to see if kids are using AI. Well, I think it's flawed for 2 reasons. Number one, just like AI has its own hallucinations on results, AI detectors are actually really bad at detecting AI generated stuff. And so you get these false positives of, oh, well, no, you used AI. Well, no, I didn't. In fact, 90% of this is me, 10%, I used for some research or some, sources or things of that nature. And I think that's like another risk that you can potentially have. And, I also think kind of side topic or small vent is we should actually be teaching them how to use it and integrate it in what they're learning. So here are the things that you should do. And here's the things that you should use AI for when building this essay. I think that's the more practical approach. And I think we can take that into business as well. Here's the things that you should be doing and what you're really good at. Here's the things that you should supplement with AI to help you. And I think taking that approach can de-risk a lot of these things that we're talking about. So
very powerful conversation. Jonathan, where can people go find out more about what you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, which is where I spend most of my time. I do have a website, aipowergtm.com, if you want to check that out, but mainly just connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a DM or anything like that. And I typically share what I'm working on, share my thoughts. I write about business, AI, go to market are really the 3 things that I talk a lot about. So
get out there, test this stuff, engage with Jonathan, follow what he's doing and what he's sharing. There are a number of things that came up and we were just scratching the surface. Bear in mind, it is a tool. It's a tool. These are tools that will enable and empower you to do better things. One of the things I like about enablement technology that is emerging technology, so emerging tech and enablement tech, is that it helps humans do better human things. And this is one of those things that will help humans do better human things. The only way that it helps you, though, is if you actually start using it, start testing it, and start figuring out how can you be a better craftsman with the resources that are available and create something that's amazing. Jonathan, I appreciate the time. If you know of someone who would enjoy this podcast, enjoy this conversation, please share with them. Let Jonathan and I know via LinkedIn. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking different about your process?